I believe we should go to the moon.
That's one small step for man.
It will not be one man, it will be an entire nation.
One giant leap for mankind.
On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. His dreams took flight when he was a young boy growing up in Wapakoneta.
As you may know, there's a museum there honoring Armstrong and all the Ohioans who have attempted to defy gravity. 13 ABC's Lisa Guyton giving us a behind-the-scenes look at the incredible collection at the Armstrong Air and Space Museum.
The idea for this museum was born while Armstrong was still on the moon. It took several years to build, and the doors opened for the very first time July 20th, 1972. In the years since then, more than 2.5 million people have come through these doors.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
And with that, a man from small-town Ohio stepped onto the world stage.
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Neil Armstrong grew up in Wapakoneta. John Swez knew the Armstrong family from an early age.
He was quiet and reserved, which I've always thought was one of the reasons that NASA selected him to become the first man to walk on the moon.
John later became the executive director of the Armstrong Air and Space Museum in Wapakoneta.
He would stop in the museum from time to time just to say hello or to drop some type of artifact off or something.
The museum that bears the name of the first man on the moon is full of artifacts and pieces of history connected to the American space program.
The Armstrong Air and Space Museum celebrates not just the accomplishments of Neil Armstrong, but of Ohio astronauts and really the whole story of pushing the limits of exploring space and aviation. The road to space goes through Ohio.
It was a long road for Armstrong from Wapakoneta to the moon. He was a Navy fighter pilot and a test pilot before he became an astronaut.
He wanted to fly the most high-tech, the most, up-to-date craft that was out there, and flying a lunar module to the lunar surface was the ultimate.
When it comes to Armstrong and flight, a rare Skylancer that he flew as part of a NASA program greets visitors outside. And inside is the plane that started it all for Armstrong.
The Port Connecticut Airport's not here anymore, but it was a mile or so north of town. He'd come home from school, hop on his bike, pedal out, work on his piloting. Got his pilot license before he got his driver's license.
Armstrong's backup suit for the Apollo 11 mission is part of the museum collection. So is a suit Armstrong actually wore in space. And when it comes to a favorite artifact, well, that depends on who you ask. The Gemini 8 capsule that Armstrong flew in his first space mission tops a lot of lists. It was the first successful docking exercise in space and the first in-flight emergency.
Because of Neil's quick thinking to initiate the return thruster system to stabilize the spacecraft, it may have ended the mission then, but it certainly saved their lives. It was still a success.
Another favorite, the moon rock.
When you look at that and I think that is from the moon, and you go out and look up the night sky and just imagine that, hey, some kid from Wapakoneta went up there, picked that up and brought it back. You know what I mean? It's just one of those, it's just an amazing concept.
Some of the early space technology is also on display.
If you look at the tips of the gloves, you see little lights there so that they could see in the the dim levels of the spacecraft. Now nowadays you have something like that. It's an LED. Those weren't LEDs. Those were little incandescent bulbs.
The dreams that carried a young boy from Wapakoneta into the history books are still very much alive and inspiring people all over the world.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Lisa Guyton, 13 ABC. Action News.
And some of us sharing where we were on that day when we landed on the moon. Join 13 ABC this summer for One Small Step as we celebrate the contributions from Northwest Ohio that helped mankind reach the moon. And we look forward to the discovery still ahead. That's right here on 13 ABC Action News.